There is a report that Bill Belichick, North Carolina head coach, might not make it to the season opener against TCU. That's bad news for the Frogs.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for the past 12 years. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. New customers at FanDuel.com or on the FanDuel app, you hit on your first $5 bet. If you win your first $5 bet, you get up to $200 in bonus bets. I'll tell you more about them later on in the show. We'll also talk about a new potential 16-team college football playoff format that is gaining some steam among SEC and Big Ten schools. I'm hopeful that the Big 12 will fight against that. But we start today with news about TCU football, but really we're honing in the first segment on TCU's opponent in the season opener, North Carolina. Pablo Torre, formerly of ESPN, now works for Meadowlark Media and hosts a podcast called Pablo Torre Finds Out, where he does investigative journalism on big-time topics in sports, sometimes odd topics in sports. So on Friday, he reported a story. He did a podcast where he talked about Jordan Hudson, Bill Belichick's girlfriend, his much younger girlfriend. And up to this point, I have stayed away from any talk about Bill Belichick and his relationship with Jordan Hudson for a number of reasons. One of them being this is a TCU podcast, but also it's been a popular topic of conversation in sports circles, and sports media figures have framed it as, well, it's, we're talking about one of the best coaches of all time. He's the new face of a big-time college football program. But in reality, it's just gossip, right? It's just the fact that we're talking about a very old man at 74. Sorry if that offends our older people that are listening. Dating a 24-year-old woman. It's Us Weekly. It's tabloid fodder in the sports world. But Pablo Torre discussed a number of things within that relationship, one of them being that recently North Carolina had banned Jordan Hudson from the facility because she had become more of a presence in Bill's life and Bill's business. She was making his family and friends uncomfortable and making the powers that be at North Carolina uncomfortable as well. And they had banned her from the facility because she was becoming a distraction. North Carolina refuted that. There was an ensuing fallout. But then on Monday, Pablo went on the Dominique Foxworth show. And Dominique asked him point blank. He was like, do you think Bill will make it to the season with all this kind of chaos that is swirling around? And here was his quote when asked that question. He said he thinks there's a real chance that he doesn't make it to week one. He pointed out, and he says, the reason I say this is because even before the Jordan Hudson thing became public, even before it went from messy backstage, now obviously messy everywhere, the date that matters most is June 1st. And he went on to explain that on June 1st, Bill Belichick's buyout goes from $10 million to $1 million. That is a very unique contract stipulation in college football. And at the time that he signed that deal, the reason that was given for that huge steep drop-off in the buyout was, well, if an NFL team comes calling, I want to have that flexibility to make a move. But Pablo's theory is that if this relationship between him and North Carolina is already so damaged that it can't be fixed, or he just doesn't want to deal with it anymore, he could, in theory, write a check for $1 million and hand it to the people at UNC and say, hey, good luck. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm moving on. That would be bad for TCU. And you might say, why? Like, that would be good for TCU in the fact that it would throw a already chaotic situation, reportedly, into even more chaos. A new coach would come in. Inevitably, a bunch of talented players would hit the portal. They would have to reset the roster, and they wouldn't really have time to do that. And then TCU, if they're the team we think they are, should roll in that ball game. Here's why I think it's bad for TCU. First off, this is now a standalone Monday night game. It's a big opportunity for the Frogs on the national stage. They need a chance like this to show who they are and show what they can do. I don't know what the flex deals are like in college football. What I mean by that is in the NFL, especially late in the season, they are allowed to flex time slots with their TV partners. So if all of a sudden Rams 49ers in week 17 or week 18 becomes a battle for the NFC West, like winner wins the division or winner gets in the NFC playoffs, and it's supposed to be played at 3:25, they can move that to 7:20. They can move that to the Sunday night game to make sure everybody gets to see it and showcase that game with high stakes in their main time slot. I'm not sure if they can do that in college football, but we know that ESPN and the TV partners sort of run the game. So if Bill left, I think there's a good chance they could look at this and say, you know what? Maybe we don't want to have this happen. Maybe we don't want to put this game in that premier time slot in the opening week of the season, which would be disappointing given the opportunity that's in front of them. I also think that this is going to be a competitive game. 2 years ago, when the Deion Sanders era was starting up, there was so much talk about Deion and the way he ran his program and how unique it was. And it was chaotic, and there were distractions happening, and he was filming, his own documentary, and he had his media team in there. And there were a lot of detractors who were like, this is not going to work, myself included. This is a circus. This isn't going to work. Well, it ended up working, at least in week one. Now, that first season was pretty bumpy overall, but they got off to a nice start, and they beat TCU on the road. So I think this UNC team with Bill Belichick will be a formidable opponent. TCU has a tough schedule in conference play. They're going to play a lot of physical teams. They're going to play some good defenses. This season opener against a coach like this would give you a great feel for, hey, here's how people are going to attack us. We think we have an elite offense with a returning quarterback and good skill players and a retooled offensive line. Well, this is how one of the greatest coaches of all time attacked our deficiencies or tried to expose our weaknesses. And you can identify that and carry that throughout the rest of the season. Now, the reality is, I don't think this is going to happen. I feel like he makes it to week one and coaches for North Carolina. And the reason I say that is this. In my mind, Bill took this job with a mission in mind. And that mission was he did not get an opportunity in the NFL. He took some time off. He's now coming back. And he's trying to show NFL general managers and owners, hey, I can still do this. I can coach. I'm good at this. I'm not just a coach who was paired with the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady. I was a huge part of that operation. I can learn new things. I'm working in a new world of college football where stuff is constantly changing, and I'm able to keep up. And that would give him, in theory, the opportunity to jump back in and coach in the NFL soon, which is what I think he ultimately wants, right? Maybe he gets into the college game and finds out that he loves it, but I feel like this is a means to an end, and that goal is to get back to the NFL. If you leave on your own accord in the middle of the summer and you don't even coach a game, and the only thing you really brought to the table is promoting your new book with your girlfriend on CBS This Morning and other various morning shows, then you better be prepared to never coach again. Because like it or not, the NFL made their decision. They have shown you, you know what? Time catches up with everybody. And they are doubting Bill Belichick. So if the whole point of this was to get a second chance at coaching in the league, and the lasting memory of you at North Carolina is leaving them in the lurch, that's not going to help your cause. Also, if he left, who would coach this team? Would his son take over? Steve Belichick, defensive coordinator, Freddie Kitchens as their OC. Those are really the only two guys who you see those names and you immediately say, okay, got some experience in this world. They could do it. But this is not a loaded coaching staff with NFL talent everywhere. So I think he'll stick around. And I feel like even though his presence should make it a closer football game, I believe the long-term dividends for this TCU team throughout the rest of the season would be huge if they got to face off against him and just see, okay, how does this coaching staff evaluate what we're doing? What do they think the key is to slowing down TCU? And we can catalog that and compartmentalize it and start to build a plan for how to figure it out moving forward. Because there's no real breaks here. You get that FCS game 10 days later, and then you're on to SMU, and then the teeth of conference play. So it's coming quick, and they have to be ready for it. Game planning and facing off against Belichick could be helpful in that regard, and that would give them the opportunity to sort of evaluate some of those things. And I feel like he'll be there because I still maintain that he wants to get back in the NFL, and the only way to do that is to do this job well. He's got to prove, as crazy as it sounds, given all the Super Bowl rings he has, but this is very much a what have you done for me lately type of business, right? And he has to prove, I can still do this. I'm still energized. I'm still engaged. I know how to relate to people. I can figure out how to coach in this modern world. If he just packs up and leaves, then he better be ready to sit on his couch or find a new hobby, because he won't be coaching in the NFL anytime soon. And that's I think where he wants to be. And TCU needs him there too, so they can get some big time attention in that standalone week 1 ball game. When we come back, surprise, surprise, the SEC and the Big Ten are looking out for themselves. Well, I opened the show with it. They're one of our loyal sponsors, FanDuel. It's where the game starts. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app. Give it a try today. You love sports. I love sports. I'm always looking for a side hustle. I'm always looking for another way to make some cash. Why not start wagering on these games and give yourself an opportunity to make some money? The NBA playoffs are in full swing. How about the Knicks, man? Taking down the Celtics. Do you think the Celtics will come back here? You can throw down some cash on FanDuel. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. They have player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. There's more ways than ever before to be smart and win big. You can get a $200 bonus in bets if your first $5 bet hits. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So college football playoff expansion is coming. I don't know the particulars of when it's going to happen, but there's more money on the table. There's revenue to be had. And the powers that be in college football are going to find a way to get it. Ross Dellinger is reporting that there is a new proposed 16-team format that is gaining some steam among SEC and Big Ten schools. The proposed format would give 4 automatic qualifying bids to SEC and Big 12 teams. It would give 2 automatic bids to the ACC and the Big 12. The group of 6 would get 1, and there would be 3 at-large spots. Well, of course, the SEC and the Big 10 are excited about this. It gives them more chances to get in the playoff. I really hope that the Big 12 and the ACC hold their water here and fight back, because we've been staring this down for some time now. There's been rumors about, hey, it's going to expand to 16 teams. The SEC and the Big 10 want a bigger part of the pie when we talk about like competitive equity and a seat at the table in the playoff. And I understand the SEC and the Big 10 make more money than these other 2 conferences. But what are they threatening you with? Like, why do they have this much power in these scenarios? Because when all this realignment started shifting again and the Pac-12 was crumbling and everything was going on, the common line that was thrown out there was, well, the SEC and the Big 10, they can throw their weight around in this way because they always have the threat of, hey, if we don't get what we want, we'll just separate and do our own thing. We'll create our own super league. And you can't do anything about that. But as we step into the world of revenue sharing and college football continues to change and to evolve, I think that is becoming less and less likely. The idea that those 2 conferences are going to break off, maybe poach a few schools from the ACC and Big 12 respectively, and create their own super league. There's so much happening in college sports in general, with the portal, with revenue sharing, with everything going on. You need a bigger entity that's collaborative and that is in charge of these day-to-day and long-term decisions as well. And I don't think the SEC and the Big 10 has the kind of manpower to pull some of those things off. So stand up for yourself. Like, don't just because they have better TV deals doesn't mean they get more teams in the playoff. I mean, having 2 bids is nice, and there's 3 at-large bids, so potentially in a good season where things are going well, yeah, you could end up with 3 Big 12 teams in the playoff. But even in that scenario, it does not surpass the 4 teams that the SEC and the Big 10 are potentially getting. And I get it. The SEC is really good at football. The Big 10, Michigan and Ohio State, Michigan have won the last 2 national championships. But that doesn't mean you just get to take away automatic bids and say, you know what, we got this. These are ours. You can't do anything about it. That doesn't make any sense. Brett Yormark just got a contract extension. He's got some stability within the Big 12 with the university presidents. He's done a good job to build trust there. He needs to be at the forefront of saying, hey, not so fast. Like, you can't just tell us what you're doing and expect us to immediately get on board. What is in it for us? You need us. As much as they want to pretend that the Big 12 and the ACC don't exist, they need those conferences to make up the national landscape of college football. And the Big 12 needs to start acting like they have that type of club in their bag where they can say, you know what? We're not just going to roll over and allow you to do what you want and tell us what to do and push us around. That's not how this works. Within these automatic bids, you could have more play-in scenarios in, the conference. Maybe you have a third, like a second and third place play each other, and then you get the championship game just to add more games to the schedule. But the Big 12 has to be careful not to allow the SEC and the Big 10 to just take over and do whatever they want. They have to have some pushback on this. Is TCU a big enough school and program to carry the Big 12? We'll talk about that next on Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. You can't mess around with your money, man, but it's easy to lose track of how much you're spending. I have an issue with going out to eat and lunch. I'm trying to do better about it. Monarch Money is helping me out. It can help track your spending, but it's not just a budgeting app. It's also a financial and wealth building command center. Give Monarch Money a try today. If you ever checked your bank account and you wonder what the heck happened, Monarch Money can help you out. They give you surprising insights that allow you to cut back in different areas, all in one convenience. So instead of juggling multiple apps, you can view everything in the Monarch app, check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. It's great for your partner or your spouse because you can put all your joint accounts or your separate accounts in one place so you can have a clear picture of what your spending looks like, what your wealth opportunities look like. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off of your first year. Monarch Money, give it a try today. 50% off your first year. Again, when you use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. Yesterday, I talked about Josh Hoover and the fact that I feel like he's not getting enough attention. There's a lot of Big 12 quarterback lists that are being thrown around right now as we get closer to the summer. We get closer to fall camp in the upcoming season. And Josh isn't up there with the Sam Levitts, the Rocco Becks, Sawyer Robertsons. And I don't understand it given the season that he just had. Now, sorry if you heard me in the background there. One YouTube user said respect will be earned. If he has the season we think he's capable of, things will work out well, stay healthy, and make good decisions. And I agree with that. I think ultimately, I said this yesterday, I typically don't get super worked up about these preseason lists and these preseason rankings. And the reason is most of the time it takes care of itself. Okay. And TCU will have opportunities as a team to prove people wrong. Josh Hoover will have opportunities individually to prove people wrong. And if he plays well and the team wins, he will get noticed. That's just the facts. But it's frustrating to me that the media, like the national media landscape, kind of treats Josh as like almost like he's not even a returning QB that had a great season last year and cleaned up those turnovers in the second half of the season. Robert Solis says, what do you think about Tim Fitzgerald saying neither TCU nor Baylor can be the flagship of the conference because of their size? So I want to have a longer conversation about that on tomorrow's show. And I need to go listen to that and get the full context of his comments. Tim Fitzgerald covers Kansas State, if you didn't know, and he also talks about the Big 12 and covers the Big 12. I mean, I don't agree with that. I think TCU has done a really good job over the past 2 decades of building a brand. Now, it is not a brand that can withstand losing. What I mean by that is there's not a lot of these schools, but there are certain schools, blue blood programs across the country that even if the team is bad, people will watch. People will be interested. People will tune in. That's not where TCU is. But if TCU built a consistent winner in the Big 12, people would tune in and watch. And they would catch on because TCU is a team that's been in the national championship recently. They were in the Rose. I mean, they've done it, right? They've played at a high level. They've won big games. They've been in the college football playoff conversation more than once. So I think they're big enough schools to carry it. I believe that, yes, TCU is a small alumni base, a small private school when we talk about, relative to other schools in the league. But TCU has been around long enough and been successful long enough that people realize who we are. It might not be their first thought when you talk about like elite football programs, but people know that TCU has a history under Gary Patterson and under Sonny Dykes of having successful teams that can make big time runs. So I think they can be, but it comes down to you got to win. You have to make sure that by winning, you're staying relevant. And that's a big part of it for TCU and a lot of other schools. We'll be back tomorrow. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available there.